For results, this is where your data analysis will be presented. So depending on how you collected your data, so if you did a quantitative, a qualitative, or a mixed method study, will depend on the format of how you present those results. But overall, just remain consistent. So if you've got a quantitative study and you're presenting some different information, whether it's in tables or figures or whatnot, stay consistent. Don't flip flop between styles or color schemes or anything like that. Remember, you're trying to look professional. You're not trying to look creative in this realm. So a little bit more information about the quantitative study as far as a template. You want to restate your research question and your hypothesis or hypotheses at the very beginning. You're going to name the statistical test you use, report degrees of freedom, and you're going to cite any test value or benchmark value, and then identify probability level. And then you can go into the information you're going to give so that you can have a little bit of support with why you did things and how you did it. If you're looking at more of the qualitative study style of collecting data, you want to look at a little bit different strategy here. So you want to talk about your narrative style, right? So whether it's storytelling or otherwise. Then you want to provide a perspective, so a frame of reference for the research participant, so to speak. You want to make sure you have thick descriptions when you have your data and you're presenting that. So we're talking about longer quotes, short passages, things like that. It's important to use metaphors and analogies to help the reader understand where you're going with your results. And you'll, as much as possible, you want to use wording from participants to help really provide that description for the reader. And then something else that I've seen used that's pretty popular is using the tabular form as well. Overall, qualitative research is not as prevalent as quantitative research in our fields, whether we're looking at parks, recreation, sports, tourism, or anything like that. But it is gaining popularity overall to provide better understandings in different circumstances. And then for the mixed methods study, you just want to let the reader know how you're going to organize your results. So are you going to cover qualitative first, then quantitative, or vice versa? And then really just set that up for them. And then what I would do is for each section is kind of do like, with quantitative, how we said to set that up, do the same thing in your mixed methodology. Just what you're going to do is decide which one's going to go first, follow the format previously discussed. And then at the very beginning, after you get those lined out at the very beginning, say, I'm going to present this the results of this mixed method study, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to give you qualitative first, then quantitative, and for this reasoning. Here's a list of adjectives that you may find useful when writing your results section. So anything that relates to numbers here, like if you're talking about the data that you've got and the analyses that you've performed, it's real common to see results sections written up where you use the same phrase over and over again. So, you'll see things that say a majority of respondents said this, or a majority of respondents said this, or a majority of respondents said that, a majority of respondents said that, on and on and on. What we want to do is have a list of different things we can have at our disposal, a list of different words, right, that can kind of mean the same thing, but change up that lingo a little bit. Anyway, here's a short list, and I'm sure there's more. Just make sure that when you're writing those sections, it may be helpful to have this. So the discussion is really your interpretation of the findings. You want to begin by summarizing the study's purpose, methods, and major findings. And then what you want to do is kind of integrate previous studies, theories, and explanations related to those findings. So you can go back to your theoretical theoretical underpinnings. You can go back to your literature review and things like that, to kind of guide you in how you really discuss these, right? How you really interpret the findings. But, also you want to make sure that you're going to talk about the limitations of your study. So things that kept you from really saying for sure this is absolutely true. So a lot of times is, we need to repeat this study to make sure that it holds up true to different audiences or different time frames or anything like that. But just be real honest. I mean, the study has value, but you want to be honest about what limitations are in place. Then we'll lean into the conclusion section. This is where the meaning and the importance of the study comes to light. What we learn from the study is presented. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to state a conclusion for each major research question you have. So if you have one or more, up to 5 to 10 or however many you have, for each one, you'll want to have a statement of conclusion. And then after that, you want to state whatever implications may come from your theory building or your testing, right? So what are the implications if this is true? What are the implications if we put this into practice? Things like that. What you don't want to do is over or understate the significance. So what I try to do is I try to think about what's realistic, right? It's not realistic to say everybody in the world thinks this way. It's also not realistic to say nobody thinks this way. So really think about what's realistic here. And if you think about that in a general time frame, or in a general frame of reference, you can usually guide yourself pretty well there. So here's a couple of examples here. So if we're very certain things are going to be true, we can say the results strongly indicate the following conclusion, right? If we're only somewhat certain, we can say, given the limitations of the study, the results indicate the support of yada, yada, yada. And if we're uncertain, or we're just not sure, or we don't think it's true, or whatever it may be, the preliminary evidence of this pilot study suggests the tentative conclusion. So you can see there that we've kind of given ourselves a buffer to say, even if we're very certain, we're just going to say the results strongly indicate versus this is absolutely true. So then we'll move on to recommendations. And this is where you're going to say something should be done. You're going to provide action. So there's really two different types of recommendations here. So we've got the professional practice and policy. So what are we going to do in the real world with this, right? So based on this information, I think we should offer this, or I think we should change this practice, or should be our new benchmark. Then you can also recommend future research in certain areas, whether that's to repeat the study, whether that's to augment the study, or just change the direction in how we look at the frame of reference or whatnot. And both are very important to the recommendation process. So let's look at a couple of examples here for professional practice and policy recommendations. So we're thinking about writing recommendations. We want to think about the what. So we clearly state the recommendation. We make a statement regarding a course of action. So this is what should be done. Then we go why. So we're going to provide a rationale for the recommendations, drawing on our information such as our results, previous studies, and stuff like that. Then we're going to talk about where. So we're going to specify what programs, facilities, personnel, and departmental functions should be involved in carrying out the recommendation, right? So anybody that can help put that into action. Then we're going to talk about when. So whenever the recommendation should be phased in, fully facilitated, and evaluated. And then we can talk about who. So we're going to talk about the individuals or entities that should be involved in carrying out the recommendation. So moving beyond the where, we're going to go specifically to the who as well. So that's what the full recommendation should have, is all those aspects.